Hello and welcome to the Business Today show. I'm your host Udayan Mukherjee and I have a very special guest for you today. While it's true that we have been showcasing some truly outstanding people from the world of business on this show, and it is also true that we do have Indian business leaders sitting on top of giant global corporations like Microsoft and Google today, the true trailblazer in this respect was the lady who took over at PepsiCo 15 years ago, when it was almost unheard of to think that a woman of Indian origin could lead a global corporation of that size. And now she's penned down her thoughts about her life and her career in a wonderful book called My Life in Full, which I've read over the last few days and which releases today. It's a thought-provoking, gripping, moving, and ultimately inspiring book, which I'm sure all of you will go on to read. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome Indra Nooyi to this show today. Ms. Nooyi, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, and my compliments on this wonderful book that you've written.
Thank you, Udayan, and thank you for having me on your show. It's a pleasure to talk with you.
Thank you. But I want to start with a story that you put down in the introduction, which is when you meet Manmohan Singh and Barack Obama in the United States, and both of them say that, hey, she's one of us, and you're quite amused by the fact that two business leaders, the tallest in the world, are laying some claim on you. But if I can ask you, whose claim did you get more chuffed about? Was it Mr. Singh or was it Mr. Obama?
I must say the claim that both of them made on me made me feel overwhelmed. Actually, I puffed up with pride a little bit that the world's oldest democracy and the world's largest democracy were both claiming me as one of their own. And it came to my mind at that point that I was really a wonderful product of two fantastic cultures. My upbringing in India and my ascent, the fact that I thrived in the United States. So nobody's come and chuffed me more than the others, but I was just overwhelmed that two great leaders were both claiming me as one of their own. It's a unique position to be in.
Of course it is. It's a great honor. And but just staying with the question, you left India when you were about 22, 23. You've lived most of your life after that in the US. How much of Indianness do you retain? I mean, are parts of you intrinsically Indian? I mean, your habits, mannerisms, choice of foods, anything that you can share with us?
Well, they say that your early years are the most formative years. And so a lot of what I grew up with, I still carry along with me. I'm married to somebody who is Indian too. And so, the two of us together have kept our core Indian values. Look, I'm a blend of the wonderful Indian values and the wonderful American values. I give our kids a lot of freedom. We live life in a very different way than we did in India. Things like being a vegetarian, which the way I grew up in my household, those things I haven't forgotten. But, I'm a big lover of American sports, American music. I love what this country stands for. And so I am the best blend of everything wonderful about India and everything that's just spectacular about the country that I've chosen to live in and become a citizen of.
As I started off by saying, when you took over at PepsiCo, it was almost unheard of. I mean, it happened really once in many years that a woman would take over at the helm of a corporation of that size, leave alone a woman who had Asian roots. But even today, 15 years down the line, we just have about 30 odd of the S&P 500 corporations being led by women. Are you happy at the pace at which this rebalancing is happening between men and women in the workplace, or do you think it should have happened by now at a far faster clip?
Well, you can look at the cup as half full or half empty. I'm going to look at it first as half full and say that in '94, when I entered PepsiCo, there were 0 women CEOs. In 2006, when I took over as head of PepsiCo, there were about 6 or 7 women CEOs. By the time I retired in 2018 and 2019, there were 41 women CEOs. So almost 9% of Fortune 500 companies are being run by women CEOs now. Now, again, you've got to understand, versus where we started, this is tremendous progress. Versus where we could be, there's a long ways to go. But remember, to build a CEO takes years. I mean, there's a great Chinese proverb which says, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, the second best time is today. So many of us were products of trees that were planted 20 years ago. Along the way, more trees had to be planted, and we need to plant more trees to make more women CEOs going forward. So things have to change. I mean, the environment in companies have to change so that women don't feel any sort of unconscious bias. They don't feel like they're being discriminated when it comes to pay. And I think as women enter the workforce in large numbers in jobs that could take them to be CEOs, we've got to provide them the support to be able to juggle their work with their families, if they choose to have families. I think that's the next big challenge in front of us, because women as a group, incredibly smart, incredibly driven. They're getting more of the college degrees than ever before, more than the men. Most of the top grades are going to women. They're being overrepresented in STEM, engineering. So the future is very bright for women when it comes to education. What happens in the job situation has got to match with the quality of the talent coming out of colleges. So if that happens and women are nurtured and encouraged in the workforce, I think you'll see a lot more women CEOs in the next 10 and 15 years. I'm very optimistic.